So I think this next line, I'd like to show you how to put in that the grip strip brand. It's just a little different technique. And it looks to me like we're going to be able to start off here. Well, I'll start right here on this wall. And we're going to go with the 1-inch variety. The grip strip, since it is closed sail, doesn't compress quite as easily. Sometimes you're able to squeeze it around a knot like that and push it in. And this log was pretty nice and even. But I suggest that you throw a few staples in there just to make sure that this doesn't move around. You can use a hand stapler. You can use a pneumatic air stapler for these. This is just a small electric stapler. And that'll hold that in there nice and tight. This also is a nice, easy, relatively even log seam to put the backer in. Now I get to the end here, and I'm going to just rip this off with my fingers. Works pretty well. I'll put a couple more staples in it. And that line's done. Now on this next line, we have a little problem that we have to deal with. There's one of the blocks from the stacking of the logs. They frequently will have blocks that keep the logs spaced, and it's sticking out into our line. I've seen some homes where people try to wrap their chinking up and around blocks, and it looks really bad when they're sticking out of the chink line. So what we'll try to do on this, we'll go on this one maybe a little bit larger piece of backer rod, but that block is still wedging us from behind. So I will take my knife and trim just a small amount off the back of this backer rod. You have to be real careful with these because they're pretty sharp. That will allow the backer rod to stay in the position that it needs to be. There's no big hump there left from that wedge. And we'll move along. Now this log has a tendency to get smaller, the groove, as we go. The backer rod's sticking out a little bit too far. You have to visualize that there's going to be at least a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch of chink that's covering the top of this backer, which if I left the backer in this spot would start to make this chink line really wide, and we don't want that. So I'll back up a little ways. This looks like about a good spot here. I'll cut the backer rod there, and I'll move to a slightly smaller size. And as I come down, I'm having the same thing because this log is tapering down smaller and smaller. So I'm going to have to drop again back to about 1 inch width. That's going to only work for a little ways. Cut it. Go back to 1 1/4 inches. Finish it off with that. Now most of this is staying in there fairly well at this point in time. I still would recommend going back and putting some more staples in there, especially if it's going to sit for very long.
There's something I don't understand about what you just did.
Okay.
You had to cut that like 4 different times, but this yellow stuff looks like you could have started with a bigger size and squished it in, and wouldn't that have been easier to do because you could have compressed it more and then let it not compress as much and just done that whole thing in one size?
You can get away with less size changes with the open sail backer rod, but one thing I really recommend against is really compressing it tight and trying to jam it in there. You don't have a nice even finish. It'll get wrinkly on you if you compress it too much, and that oftentimes will transfer into the finish on the chinking once it cures out, and you'll see that.
Okay.